welcome back to Inspire the Podcast with myself, Nicola Wills. After spending many hectic years working a 60-hour week as a journalist, our guest knew the stressful pace was impacting her sleep, energy, and mood. Recognizing something had to change, she decided to take control of her well-being. Having a personal interest in holistic therapies, she trained in aromatherapy and began formulating complex and efficacious essential oils blends at home. In 2005, she teamed up with friend Oliver Monell to launch NEOM, which today is one of the leading wellness brands in the UK and beyond. Today, NEOM's mission is to help boost people's well-being around the world through small steps that can make a big difference. Please welcome Nicola Elliott.
Hello.
Hi, my darling.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, of course. Thank you so much for joining us. So obviously in your bio, a very successful CEO, you've got it all. But in this podcast, what I love to do is to really go behind the scenes of what it took, the stories behind the success, and just how did you get to this place? So if it's okay with you, I would like to go right back to the beginning and share baby Nicola. Where did it all start?
Go for it. Do you mean baby Nicola, or do you mean baby Nicola pre-NEOM?
Baby Nicola, where were you born? What's your life growing up? Your schooling? Wow. How does that really, what does that look like?
Well, it's an interesting question, isn't it? Because I do ask myself a little bit now I have children. What did I do? What bits would I want to replicate and not replicate? And I was thinking this the other day, or talking this through the other day with someone. I was a really, really naughty child, Nicola. Yeah, I was. Like and I know you're not meant to say that now, so I don't say it to my also similar daughter. But I think I just wasn't very good at sticking within the rules and the lanes of normal life. And I just questioned everything. And, of course, that sort of, transpired that it was problematic at school. I was quite a clever kid, but I was constantly, if the chemistry lesson was presented in the wrong way, I'd be like, well, I'm not listening to this. Or if if I didn't like the maths, I was like, there's no point in this because I'm going to double down on English and art because I like that. So, just probably very tiresome and difficult to parent. But it is fascinating, as I say, not for no other reason for me now than to think, what are our children doing and how are they sort of fitting in with norms, and how do we kind of get the best out of them, I suppose. So I was pretty naughty and always in trouble. I definitely think probably spending, time in therapy post 35, that was the start of my anxiety, actually, which led to NEOM. And also I was raised in the North, as you can probably tell from my dulcet tones, which I think gave me a bit of a no-nonsense attitude, which has been helpful, I think. And my father was an entrepreneur. He had a car auction, which is as far from a beauty brand as you possibly could imagine in the business world. But I think there's some commonalities, whatever you do, that real sort of roll your sleeves up, get on with it, attitude, and that sort of belief that you can do anything, and a desire to want to work for yourself. I did quite well in the corporate world later on. It's sort of, I suppose you would call corporate world. I worked at Condé Nast for nearly 10 years as a journalist, but in my family, working for yourself was always the sort of the uber goal. So I think, again, it's interesting when you look back and you look at those things that have shaped you. I would say they're the main things.
Yeah, and the thing is, at the time when you're, that naughty child at school, actually, it's such a blessing, because if you didn't have that feist, that spirit, that actually, no, I want to do things differently, that is the makings of an entrepreneur. But when you're at school and you're being taught, you've got to stay in line and go to the rules, you feel like you're bad. It's not like celebrated, the traits that you had. And obviously only now as a mum can you see that in your daughter, and you're like, you're difficult, but go on, girl. It's
exactly. She got a bad behavior point yesterday for laughing at someone throwing their flour all over the floor in, home economics or something.
But that's funny.
It's funny.
It's funny.
Her point to that then was that she wanted to raise a grading system for points because, it's very suppressing to not be able to laugh at someone who's flour has been, I think it was caught in like the whisk and it went all over the teacher or something. There's no part of her that would just go, suck it up. It's a thing you're not meant to laugh at, and you move on. And so those little things that you can see, they start early. They're way more challenging to parent. Of course they are.
Yeah.
And on a small thing like that, it's less of a problem. When it becomes something bigger and she's arguing about, you know, a curfew or whatever, clearly it's harder. But it's got to start at that point because it's just sort of intrinsically your belief and it's in you.
Yeah. So do you believe in your heart and your being that you were always meant to be an entrepreneur? Like, did you know that in your teenage years?
Well, I wanted to be a journalist and I was a journalist and I loved that. But I was quite clever, but I was really good at English and maths, and I was pretty useless at, not English and maths, English and art, and I was pretty useless at everything else. And I think that stood me in really good stead, because the kids that are really clever at everything, they've got loads of choice, right? Yeah. Whereas I had very little choice. What can you do with English and art? And so I really wanted to be a journalist. And I was very passionate about that. And I did love that career. I left for different reasons, but I did really enjoy my time doing that. But apart from that, I think really being an entrepreneur was the only thing that fulfilled the skills that I had. And I'm really a fan in life of going towards the things that you're good at, rather than working super hard and doubling down on the things that you're less good at. So yeah, I think that was probably always in me. And it's something very creative about being an entrepreneur, especially doing the sort of thing I do. Possibly not if you were, you know, I don't know, selling widget valves over and over again. But I love the idea of building something. What will the community look like? What will the brand look like? What will the products look like? How will we present it? I can almost see it sort of, you know, like, I don't know, like people might see a house renovation or designing a fashion collection. I see the whole thing, and putting it together, building it is a really creative process that requires a whole load of gumption at the same time, those two sort of skills. So yeah, it's words and it's pictures and it's emotions coming to life. And I think if that is the heart of your skill set, being an entrepreneur is a really, really good outlet for it. And do you know what? There's so many other things I would have loved to have done. You know, even yesterday, I'm sort of thinking, oh, I'd love to do like really healthy food cafe chain or something, you know, and I could see what it'd look like, and I could see what would be, I can do that for many different businesses, and it gets me excited. So yeah, I think that was one of only a few possibilities for me. I certainly couldn't have been a lawyer. I did do work experience for a week being a lawyer. And then I sat in a room going, sorry, I've got to read 24 files on my own in a room. No, this isn't going to work for me. No. And remember them. No. Oh my God. So yeah, my choices were limited.
And you touched on that you had anxiety. How, through your teenage years, kind of the early 20s, when you were you know, going to university and you were at Condé Nast, what was your confidence like then? How have you always been confident? You know, obviously we see you and hear from you now, and you're like, you know, you're this feisty CEO, but has that always been the case, that you had that self-belief?
Yes, I think so. You know, I don't big myself up in many areas because I'm typically northern. But I think I always have been quite confident. That doesn't mean I don't question myself. I don't think I get things wrong, or I can't see my, you know, my flaws, because I absolutely can. But I think quietly quite confident about what I'm doing and where I'm going, and why on balance I'm going in that direction. You know, we spoke before the podcast started about sort of only not having to be perfect. I think that comes from a belief of, I think it's crazy to think you would be perfect at anything or in any capacity. So I think when you get that into your head, and you're only really going for sort of 60, 70, 80% of anything, because that's what you believe is the right possible way of moving forward, then actually I think with that comes confidence. Whereas if I believed intrinsically that things have to be 100%, I have to be 100%, my God, of course it would threaten my confidence, because every day there would be signposts as to you're failing. So lower these standards, and then the confidence, I think, comes alongside it.
Love that. That's such great advice. And so you're in your 20s, you're working at Condé Nast, and how long are you there for?
So Condé Nast was where I worked latterly, because I worked at Glamour Magazine, but I worked at EMAP. I worked at Did
Love
you?
glamour.
I was
Oh my God, it was like my
amazing.
Bible.
Brilliant.
What does glamour say? Okay, this is what I need to do
Fun.
to get a date. This is what I need to wear for the date to go well. It was just
I hope you weren't taking too much advice from that, because that was probably just me being like da, 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 da. So I worked, that was one of the best jobs ever. I worked there twice, actually. I worked as a junior, and then I went back to work as a senior sort of later on, but I worked everywhere. I did Marie Claire. In fact, I did Marie Claire in Australia. I came back, I did Heat, that was in the fun times when it was all celebrity madness. I did Minx, which was a teen magazine. I worked on InStyle doing the covers, going to LA, New York. Back, I did the same at Glamour. I met the best friends of my life
I bet.
and they still are. You know, we had such fun. It was brilliant. It's obviously a very different time now, but it was brilliant, and I loved it. It was just a fantastic career. It's not particularly well paid, and you worked crazy hours.
It was your life. Like it's like being a performer. The same. It's like if you're a performer, if you're a journalist, you live, breathe, sleep. There's no hobbies. Like that is your whole life, isn't it? Your being.
Yeah, totally. But you know, it's funny, that whole concept, because the line of where it sort of stopped being a job and started being a hobby was very blurred for me, and not in a negative way, actually. You know, we were just friends, all kind of coming up with great creative ideas and seeing them through. And it was the boom days of, you know, celebrity and magazines, and so we enjoyed it. It was brilliant. But I do think working that hard, obviously when you're working with America, the day could only start, I almost had 2 days, because you did England in the till 4, and then we do New York, and then you do LA. LA didn't start till 5, so you know that was sort of, and then you would start really wrangling with publicists till 9 o'clock at night. And, you know, it wasn't just my job. I think, look, I was 25. What do you do at 25? You're partying like a nutter. You're not sleeping. This is back in 2005. There was no, wellbeing wasn't a word.
No.
You weren't going to gyms.
No, and the other thing is, it was like, I remember, you know, like the MySpace, Facebook days, that like it was cool to post a picture of yourself and your mates like passed out with like McDonald's next to you. You're like, we pulled an all-nighter. Like that was so cool.
Yeah, totally.
You know, and it was like your mums that did like
fun.
yoga. You know, there was nothing about mindfulness or wellness, nothing.
Totally. And look, I don't regret that. There were brilliant days, and I've maxed every chapter in my life, and that was certainly one that I maxed, and it was great fun. But it did start having an effect on my well-being, and there was no light bulb moment for NEOM, because I think everyone always says is the one. There wasn't. I think quite often it becomes a sort of culmination of bits and pieces, but one of those pieces was definitely my own well-being, and starting with anxiety, or starting to really sort of see ramifications of anxiety. And a big piece of that had to be my lifestyle. And I remember my mum saying, "You're just not looking after yourself." Again, there was no word for well-being. She was like, "When do you ever see the light? When do you ever eat anything other than pesto when you get back? When do you ever, you know, exercise, or you just don't look after yourself, you just sleep properly." You know, I think it wasn't too bad of a night on a Saturday if I was in bed by 4:30. It's like,
but the thing is, there was no conversation about it. It wasn't like, you know, my mum isn't an amazing mum, but she didn't know. I didn't know. There was no conversation. There was no education. There was no social media or podcasts to listen to think, how can I be better? It was just like absolutely a scrappy existence.
I mean, there was a really, really crusty old health food shop on the road in Islington with like an old banana in a basket outside. It was not an appealing thing to get involved in. There was no Fresh and Wild, and that was where I bought my first essential oils. And I'm telling you, walking through the door was a bit like ha 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 ha, you know, because it was, I can't remember the name of this place. I was thinking about it the other day. Anyway, I probably shouldn't name and shame, but it was really when health food shops were like, you know, just 98% full of nuts and an old banana and a
rotty, and like embarrassing. Like exactly. It was where you're like your crazy nana and aunt went, you know, after their coffee in town. I know, because I'm from Poole in Dorset, and I remember walking through and be like, oh, that's a gross shop. You know, now that's Holland and Barrett, you know. People in
you know, in bad shoes going in. And my friends who were all beauty journalists as well, was becoming very interested in naturals at the same time. That's sort of another pillar. My sister worked at Friends of the Earth, and she was like a total staunch greenie. I mean, way before that was cool as well, right? And so she was talking to me a lot about products that we were using and what we should and we shouldn't be using in products. I was fascinated in that. And but my friends who were journalists, interestingly now, a lot of them who profess to be wellbeing experts or natural experts, were like, no one's interested in natural products. They just don't work. And they were sort of very much on the side of the cosmeceuticals, doctor brands that were really big at the time. And I was like, well, I don't think that's the case. I think that you can get some really effective, quite potent, powerful natural ingredients. It is harder to work with them. It is harder to develop them. But if you get the right ones and you really blend them, and certainly where fragrances are concerned, you really took me years to get some of our blends to a place where they were really sophisticated blends. So, you can do some amazing things. But even those girls who were at the top of their tree were just like, what are you talking
it's
about?
a bit like hippy dippy. Not
totally.
Yeah, like you might as well
cool
put a banana on your face. It's just the same. And I totally
exactly.
get that. I remember that time. I used to have severe acne, and I just remember like someone suggesting to me that it could be my gut health. This is like 10-15 years ago. And I was like, what? No, I'm just going to buy this extra strong acid that's going to kill, like this, the doctor.
Totally.
And I would cover my face in acid and think that was fine whilst I'm, sleeting the crumpets and the.
Absolutely. I went on a macrobiotic cookery course in Notting Hill. I remember at this woman's house, like at the top of this flat, when Gwyneth Paltrow started talking about macrobiotics, and everyone thought it was the maddest thing. Now, actually, all the woman spoke about was, the concept of eating whole foods that haven't been heavily processed. It made total sense, right? Like what anyone who knows is sort of this far into the research would understand now. But then again, my friends were like, what are you doing? And then I trained as a nutritionist and an aromatherapist at the same time. So I just was fascinated in it. So again, it was sort of just a gentle stroll, I suppose, into creating NEOM. And I remember at that time looking around and thinking, I suppose if there was a light bulb moment or a point of all the sort of parts of my thinking that came together, I remember looking around and thinking, I'm suffering from stress and the ramifications of that. Every one of my friends seems to be suffering from either stress or poor sleep or lack of energy or a mood imbalance. It was sort of the realization that those 4 pillars were the 4 things that you needed to keep in check. And those 4 pillars, incidentally, were the things that everyone had 1, if not 2, if not 3, if not 4, out of kilter. And that for me was a bit of, was a real kind of, if you think about NEOM as building a wall, it was a real block on the wall, because I remember thinking, I want to create something. I really do believe it needs to be about well-being. I really do believe in the power of natural ingredients and that they are the things that can help us. And actually, I now realize that it needs to be about helping with these 4 disciplines, not a wide ranging, because people don't know where to start. And so it needs to be about defining well-being as these 4 sort of pillars. So that was a real kind of moment. And then bit by bit, I sort of built the story up and the brand, I suppose.
Yeah. And so just at this time, so are you still working full-time whilst training and doing these other things on the side?
Well, I did it as a side hustle.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, initially, clearly I didn't have kids at that point, but I was doing evenings, weekends. Then when I went back to Glamour for my latest role, because I worked there twice, as I said before, I managed to do a deal where I worked 4 days a week, which again, in those days wasn't doable. It just wasn't doable. And luckily I'd proven my worth enough that they said, okay. And I said, that's the only way I can do this job. And so the 4th day and then the weekends, I would work on NEOM. And I always say to people, God, just do it as a side hustle to start with. Make sure you've got some sort of green light that this thing's going to work before you jump both feet into it. So I did it that way. And then, sort of slowly.
And when you say side hustle, what did that look like? Were you selling essential oils or products at that time? Did you have the name? What was it?
Yeah. Like? So we'd launched the brand, but it was, as I say, sort of being run 2.5 days a week and evenings and weekends. We launched just with candles, which was not what we planned. We always knew it would be what it is today. But when you're starting a brand and you're selling produce, obviously the minimum order quantities are quite high, and we just didn't have any money to buy the stock. So we had £15,000 between us, Oliver and I. I had 7.5 from selling a car that I'd got for my 21st. He had some in savings. So we thought we could put the vast majority of it into stock and a tiny bit into a really rubbish website, which is what we did. And when we sort of looked at all the products that we wanted to develop, which is sort of a lineup not dissimilar to what it is today, we thought actually the one product we should probably start with is the candle, because in those days, and do you know what, this is funny because it's barely changed, 98% of candles were being made with paraffin wax, which is a crude oil derivative, and scented with synthetic fragrance. So although you might like the smell of it, and I, also like a lot of synthetic fragrance brands, which is pretty much everyone you could mention, it was a crude oil derivative burning in your living room, your home. And so we thought, actually, the idea of being able to create something that's totally natural, and that when it burns and you breathe in this, it works as a treatment, that really is a very powerful story. And I used to go around all the spas, because we only sold in spas originally, and speak to the women on reception and say, if you've got girls coming in and they're stressed, if they buy this candle, if they light it, there's sort of 25 burnt treatments within it. And so although it was, £35, I think back then, 20 years ago, it works out about £1.60 of treatment that they can continue this relaxing. And it's still the same story now. We just probably don't tell that as much, but they can continue this treatment at home. So we launched, answer to your question, with the candles, because it felt like it was the strongest story that we could get across, that people could understand.
And how important do you believe to have a story is?
You can't do it without a story. You can't. I mean, we're over consumed. Is that a word? We're consuming too much. We're looking for ways to cut, quite rightly so, and not buy stuff. We don't need things. I do believe that you'd have to reinvent the wheel. There's opportunity to redevelop everything everywhere and do it better as time moves on and life goes on. But I think if there's not a reason, and that might just be that it looks beautiful, but there has to be a reason why you're going to part with well-earned cash. For me, I can't imagine,
I agree.
Otherwise, why?
What's the point? Just going back to your anxiety and this switch. So I actually met Nicola just over a week ago at the launch of your beautiful new bath soap, magnesium
bath milk.
And one of your employees was just sharing with me how it was you, like, literally, and when she was telling me, I was like, I can literally see you like tinkering around, creating the oils, right? That was how you literally started, like, when you think of the huge wellness brand that you started in your kitchen making these oils. And so just share with us that it was for you, yourself, for your own oil. Why did you need it at the time? What was it, the anxiety that you're experiencing, the stress that you're experiencing? Why did you need that oil, and what did it do to help you?
So I suppose it's important to say, when you start with anxiety, when you have any health issue, I generally feel it's a toolkit of things that you need to put together. And as I said, for me, that conversation with my mum about looking after yourself and the various different elements was kind of really was a bit of another light bulb moment. And I think when I went into that crusty health food shop and found those essential oils, I thought, these could be a really interesting part of that toolkit. And along with the eating, whole foods and getting out in the sunlight and all the other bits and pieces that I was doing, they really were. And it felt sort of quite empowering that I could come back and create blends for myself dependent on how I was feeling that day. It almost felt like I had the tiniest bathroom in Islington, and it almost felt like I had my own sort of slightly luxurious apothecary. And it was generally, for me, anxiety. As I said to you, friends of mine were suffering with poor sleep and lack of energy. But for me,
you created little formulas for them, right?
Yeah, and I was creating for me, for my anxiety, my sister for sleep, my then boyfriend who used to come back from playing football and then have no energy to go out partying on a Saturday night. I created a blend that's still a really bestseller for us now, which is our Feel Refreshed fragrance. He thought that was so good. I used to put it in the bath. He thought that was so good. I remember him kind of going off on the tube with 30 little bottles for the football team.
Oh.
And he was, my God, they say this stuff's amazing. So it was the act, I think, of going into my bathroom, creating these blends. It honestly wasn't about creating a business in those early days. It was about, how do I create something that works and works for me and really can move the dial. And I won't deny that it being gorgeous and luxurious was an important part of that. I didn't want this to be a pill. I was working in glossy magazines. I was very aware of the nicest, most gorgeous products that were out there. And so I think it being a real joy to use it was a hygiene factor. It had to be, it was integral to it. I wasn't going to get in a bath or light a candle that smelled horrible. The two things had to work from an efficacy point of view as much as it did from a gorgeous point of view. That's why packaging, I think, is important. I'm not going to put it in a brown paper bag, otherwise we're back to that awful health food shop in Islington. You don't want to get involved in that. It's like going to you can have the same workout in a really awful gym, but
it's not the same.
You want to walk through the door. It's just not, it's not encouraging, is it? So I was developing very much for my own anxiety, but that whole package was really, really important. And I remember a time where I had this kind of big bay window out in a basement flat. There must have been 250 tiny little samples, and then I was putting them in waxes to see, how does it smell? Does it smell very different in candle bases to being in bath, and then giving them to friends with all different kind of problems. Seeing a lot of people in those early days to give me real harsh feedback. So that's how it started.
It's just amazing. And I just think there must be people, well, there will be people that are listening to this that are in the same position right now. They're kind of like, they're bathroom, bedroom, kitchen entrepreneurs, kind of dreaming and wishing like this big brand, but they're in this point. What advice would you give to someone? How did you kind of go from that to where you are? Like, do you think, was it bringing Oliver in? Did that make a big difference?
No, I think it was a few things. I think it was, you have to think big, but then also small at the same time. People start by saying, I'm going to create a brand. I would always say, start with a hero product. A hero product that has eyes on where it's going, so it fits in the sort of scheme of things when you're a much bigger brand. But it's much easier to create one product or a small collection. It's easier on the purse. It's easier for you to learn and refine that product when it goes out. It's easier to tell that story. You get cut through. People get worried if they start with one product. Let's say, if they want to start a homeware brand and they start with one cushion, they get nervous that, well, then I'll be a cushion brand forever. No, you won't, but you'll get a lot more cut through, and it'll be a lot easier for you to manage on every level than you launching a homewares collection of 100 pieces, for example. So I'd say start small, but with an eye on big. I'd also say, and this, we've touched on this with regards to life, I am really not a perfectionist. You've got to lower the bar. If I look back at some of the stuff that we did in those early days, I would absolutely cringe. And so much of it didn't stick.
And
that's fine, because you test and you learn and you iterate, and you test and you learn and you iterate. So just getting yourself out there, let's say you're doing a cushion brand just because it's at the side of me, and you just go, I'm going to do one cushion in blue with a slogan on. And then you realize people don't like the blue as much as the red. And they don't like that slogan as much as that slogan. That's going to happen. Just start with it. And so many people, I think, get nervous of making those initial mistakes, and it's part of it. And you have to commit to dropping those balls being part of the process.
Yeah, totally. And I feel like sometimes, you and I've definitely been this person, I have such a vision for what I can create which almost overwhelms me. So I don't do anything. And even though it's like the tiny steps forward, it's like, I can create this, but how just doing it. And that's just amazing advice. It's just start with one, nail that, and then grow from there.
Absolutely. And you will be surprised, even if I was doing something tomorrow with a whole load of cash and knowledge and access to people, I would still do it that way.
Yeah.
It's not me saying you've got to cut your cloth. It's actually the best way to start a business because, as I say, it allows that cut through to happen a lot quicker, and it allows you to test and learn and therefore grow quicker. So it's not about, well, I know you can't, therefore this is the way to do it. It's the right way to do it. And a lot of people stop for reasons, you know, they'll say, oh, I started a business, I started making mugs, and I stopped because, and then the reason that they give me is like, it's like just an average sort of Tuesday morning problem to me. It's like, what? There's no reason to stop. I mean, even if you went bankrupt or the mugs all smashed or you got a terrible, do you know what I mean? You move on, you move on. So I think you've got to get your head right, that and get it in that space, as opposed to thinking the blockers. There are no blockers. They're not.
That. And just talking as we're talking about this mindset, you're obviously speaking to you, your mindset is crystal clear, it's focused, it's there. Do you do anything, or have you read books? Have you, do you do personal development to get yourself in that place? You know, how have you cultivated this super positive, just get out there attitude?
Well, bear in mind, I'm not like this all the time. Okay. So I think that's only fair to say, because everyone's like, oh God, if only I could have that attitude.
I knew I was you, Nicola.
Well, no, not that. No, not that. But, you know, I know people think that because I'm on a podcast for an hour with you. So I'm obviously going to bring my best self. I'm not going to talk about all the rubbish stuff. But, you know, I'll go and have a coffee in a minute and go, oh, bloody hell, this has gone wrong. And that's not right in my life. And da-da-da-da. Like, we all have that, right? So I have that a lot, and that's fine. I'm a human. So I don't think you can think that you have to be all or nothing. I'm always reading books. In fact, I started this thing on my own Instagram now because I read so many books, and there is a bit of puff out there. There is a bit of puff, I suppose there is when it comes to beauty products. So I'm really interested in learning from people, and you might just pick up one thing. So I'm always looking for that. And I think I live half my life in Yorkshire and half my life in London. And whilst I love Yorkshire in many ways, and you know, I'm outside of my horse and my daughter a lot when I'm here, you definitely see that we are still surrounded by quite small parochial mindsets a lot, you know, especially when you're outside of London, but anywhere. And I think that's really hard to sort of battle against. So you have to surround yourself with people who think the same as you and are pushing you in the same direction. And then I think that's really important. And that's not just the people, it's the things you read, it's the things you consume. You've sort of almost got to, I suppose, like if you want to be healthy, you've got to say no to eating cake every day. You've got to also sort of say no to those forces in life. And they're not bad, they're just maybe people that aren't aligned to what you think. So that's a massive work in progress for me, but doing that, and then the same with what you ingest with books and information. And I think this took me to get to midlife to be like, thank you very much for your advice, but no, thank you very much for that book, but it's a bit useless. Like, you know, editing kind of constantly through things. But there are some brilliant books and some brilliant people that I think are fail safes that I definitely recommend a lot on my Instagram, because I think there's some, you know, again, rewind back to 2005 and the self-help book genre was a bit tragic, right?
I did 2007, like The Secret came out and it changed my life, but that was the one book,
you remember,
the DVD that I watched, and I remember thinking, oh my God, this is the answer.
Well, what I find really fascinating is I was doing some research on this the other day, and the vast majority of research into positive psychology, happiness, gut health, all of the things that, you know, have been such incredible kind of awakening pieces of information for us have only been found out in the last 5 to 10 years.
Wow.
And it's worth knowing, because when you sit and you talk to our mothers or whatever, and they say, oh, you didn't have that in mind. I said, no, you didn't know. You didn't know.
Yeah, no one knew. Yeah.
Nobody knew. So there's so much amazing information. So when you think, oh, is that a bit woo-woo? It just wasn't available. And because we're now talking about wellbeing, we're demanding to know more so we can feel better, from everything from food to information to, you know, knowledge about sleep health, etc. Then surprise, surprise, the money has been put into the research, and the research is then being given back to us. So I think it's worth knowing that that's sort of is relatively new, and therefore a whole world to get involved in and learn from.
Yeah. And I feel like for me, before I did any personal growth or development or understanding who I was, it was such an awakening. I was like, oh my gosh, like I actually have control of my thoughts and my mind. And, you know, I remember I used to go to auditions and be so crippled with anxiety and nerves, thinking everybody's better than me. I'm just rubbish. And if I knew, I will say it's like what I know now, if I knew in my 20s, oh my goodness, you know, I'd be a different human in a different place, living a totally different, probably movie star life. That's what I want to say. But you know what, it was just my mindset and my belief on who I was that kept me in that like small box, basically.
Totally. And I think the real shifter for me was, I love Mo Gaudat's book Soul for Happy. I think that was I love Mo. I think he's an amazing guy. That was a real, you know, my sort of top 3 books, that would be up there in terms of changing the way I look at the world. Yeah.
And what are your other 2?
Oh God,
top 3. Oh, sorry.
I'm just looking around at my shelves. What do I really like? I really love everything that Rangan Chatterjee does, actually. I rate him. I mean, it's quite an easy step into understanding well-being, but because he's a GP, but he's a holistic GP, I think he's really does a really good job of explaining stress, and he also very much, as we sort of do at NEOM, believes that it's about a toolkit. Obviously, it's not one thing. So I think if you're sort of new to the wellbeing journey, I would definitely read he does a stress book, he does a happy book, everything he does I think is pretty good. And then what else do I particularly like? Oh, do you know what I love? In fact, I just posted about it the other day. I love the Cat Comfort book by Matt Haig. I know Matt Haig's very famous for the Midnight Library and a lot of the novels that he's done that kind of make us think about things in a different way. But the Comfort book it's a really nice book to gift to people. It's sort of a little book, a page every day you can look at, and it really makes sense and resonates. And Brianna West is also brilliant for that. Her Instagram is fantastic as well. Just those small bites of wisdom.
Yeah.
I've got about 20, but they're really up there, I would say, in things that really make sense and aren't sort of regurgitating information.
Yeah. And I think as well, like just for our listeners, but just it's an ongoing process. You know, you never feel like you've arrived. Like there's one book that, you know, has all the answers. It's like our mind is just like our bodies. If we want to peachy bum, we have to go and do the squats 4 times a week. It's the same with our mind. If we don't use it and understand it, it just kind of, and I, you know, over the summer holidays, I didn't really do much of anything, you know, and I started kind of the year back in September, and I'm like, I feel like a mush in all areas because I haven't like stayed on top of, you know, just kind of the basics.
Yeah, but that's fine then as well. Also, sometimes now I have days where I think, I'm actually going to be quite lazy today. Because why not? I feel like it. And you don't have to be on all the time. But I think to your point as well, you know, you hit different phases of your life, don't you? And everything you've learned that you made sense to you when the children were little, suddenly the teenagers like, oh my God, I've got to learn again. Suddenly you're 45 and it's like, you know, all the thing it made sense at 20, 30, 40. Now it's like a completely new set of life problems.
So that you didn't even know existed.
Yes, exactly. And then we'll be in the next generation. Yeah, exactly. So it's a never-ending thing. But with no end game.
Yeah, exactly. So Nicola, talk to me about so you have a business partner, Oliver, and that is, I love learning that NEOM is just your initials. How amazing. But it sounds like such an amazing, like, oh, I've got this from this old book or something. But actually, just saying that it's your initials is so simple.
Well, do you know, there's a really boring story
Oh my
behind
God,
that.
tell me the boring story.
Well, it's quite useful for people that are starting a business is when you're launching something that you want to be a direct to consumer brand, which we always knew we wanted NEOM to be. One thing we were kind of quite progressive with in the beauty space, that we were born at a point where people were starting to discover brands online. Before that, just in stores. You can't get trademark for a name that is really well known. It's very hard to get trademark for any name.
Okay.
So to get trademark for a name that you can also buy the web domain for is really, really difficult. So, you know, something like, I don't know, the Cushion Company.
Yeah,
maybe you can get that, but would be a lot harder than an algorithm.
yeah, almost like a made up word.
Yeah, exactly.
Word of it, yeah.
Exactly. So when you're starting something, make sure that you can think of something that you can check has availability globally. Or if you don't want to sell globally, that's fine. But at least you can get the website. So if you start something, you think, oh, that's a lovely name. But practically, you can't get the website. You can't get it registered. You get somebody sending you a legal letter 3 years down the line.
Yeah.
Actually, do you not realize we've registered that name? So making up names a bit like a Kodak or a Google, or that's why these names now exist, because it's hard to get names elsewhere. So it is a boring story, but I think it's quite useful.
Yeah,
I
it's
think
so
you can go wrong with that. Yeah.
Yeah. And how did you know, like, having a business partner, it's a big deal. Was it your idea and you spoke to him and it came on board? Like, how did that happen?
Yeah, so I knew I wasn't great at finance, and I
Okay.
knew I wasn't great at operations, or I didn't want to be involved in the operations. And I always think, if you're getting a partner, and by the way, this might not be a business partner, this might be about you hiring this in. But most people say to me, oh, I've gone into business with Jane or whatever, and she is we both love fashion, or we both love cushions or whatever. And I always think, oh, that's not going to end well, because you're going to stand on each other's toes. Whereas when you have a very split skill set, you can both take one half of the business. And so, the rule was, anything that you touch, feel, see, to do with the brand, to do with the magic, to do with explaining the products, to do with creating the brand, would be me. Whereas I was not going to argue with Oliver about what warehouse we went into, or what system we had on the back end, or how, when the accounts were filed. So I would always say, make sure that you are really, because I understand the benefit of having somebody who can chivvy you along.
Yeah, like almost like your best friend doing a business together.
But it doesn't last.
Yeah.
It doesn't last, because in 1 year, 2 years, you've got 2 or 3 friends, 2 or 3 employees. You've also got your partner, your friend, whatever. So you don't really need that as much as you think. Certainly as time goes on, what you do need is somebody that you can rely on, that takes a big part of the business that you're not great at, or you're not interested in. So always choose your partner wisely, and make sure that it's somebody who is very different to you. Might have a very similar mindset and a similar ambition. I'm not saying that, but it's very different in terms of skill set.
Yeah. And Nicola, you're a mummy of 2 beautiful children. Just, obviously they're a little bit older now, and you're in a different stage of your life, but just talk to me. And I think, because I'm so fascinated by this, when they're like, babies going up through to 10, 11, 12, before they become a little bit more sufficient, how on earth did you grow this brand and be a mum and make it all work? Like, was it a kind of crazy mess the whole time?
Yes.
Oh my God. Thank you so much.
It was a crazy mess, but also, this is not I don't really like saying this, but I've got to be honest with you. Remember a Victoria Beckham quote back in like 2010 or something, and she said, there's 3 elements in life. There's your relationship, there's your business, there's your friends, your own sort of life. If you want to be happy, if you want to succeed, you have to choose 2 of the 3. And I really neglected for 10 years anything to do with myself. I had no hobby. I didn't really see my friends very much at all, just so I could work and be a mum. And,
Yeah,
you know,
I get that.
I don't know, would I have done that differently? Maybe. I'm not saying do that. I just
Yeah.
think it's really unfair of me to say I got the balance right, because I didn't. And, you know, I think you've got to look long and hard at your marriage and who's prepared to put in what amount of work. My ex-husband was great, actually, really, really great. We're not together anymore, but we were, and he was great. And we didn't have any money for extra help at that time.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Because
that
obviously that's
might
the answer.
help.
I'll just, get help. But, at the beginning stages, you don't have that
You have the
extra,
cash, and
yeah.
also, some people feel, not that I think you should, but you feel guilty and you
Yeah.
feel like you're wasting that time, and it's just really, really hard. So I can't say, and the pressure is on us, isn't it? That we put the pressure on ourselves as women. I don't feel like that was ever something that my now partner, my then husband, ever, if you ask them this
Like,
question,
if we were two
no.
dads sat on here, would I say, so Steve, how do you feel that, you're growing a business and you're a dad? It's like, what?
I mean, I'm not having a go at you for this because you asked the question, but it's just interesting. My current partner is the CEO of a business and he gets interviewed more than me. And I said, do you ever get asked about work-life balance? And he just laughed.
I know.
I said, there's no interview that goes past without me being asked about that and it being a massive part of it. And again, that's no slur on you, because people are interested in that. But he has never, ever been asked that question. And it's interesting. I saw a thing on TikTok yesterday, and it was they'd overlaid questions to male sports stars that they'd asked female sports stars. And it was so powerful, because they're saying, you look great in that outfit, do as a twirl. And the man's like, not overlaid, they'd ask the same questions, right? And the guy's like, what, sorry, is there something wrong with you? And all of these kind of questions that you would only ask of women. And that in itself, it's a double-edged sword, because you're interested, because you want to know, and I get that, and your listeners are interested. But the more we ask that, and the more we make that one of the most important, the more the balances skew. And so I don't know, I think that's really hard. I think we've got, without going political, I think we've got a massive issue with childcare with women in our country at the moment. That's where I see all of my really talented girls fall off a cliff with their careers. Yeah, at 27, 28, 29, have the first baby.
And it's just, because, and also I feel, and I ask you the question because, and it actually makes me emotional. I'm so ambitious and I'm so driven, but and I guess a guy wouldn't feel this, like within my heart, I feel a sense of guilt, because I feel like, I don't know, maybe the world, maybe it's that the society thinks, well, Nicola, by feeling that and wanting to do that, then you're not being a good mom, and it's, and
does your husband feel that at all?
No, of course not. Of course, he did.
Exactly.
And
I wonder whether we have enough. I wonder whether we have enough role models,
of course,
of older women.
We are the examples.
Exactly. And I find that now that I'm 45, and I find this is kind of a thing for me that I'm quite passionate about with speaking to younger women, is trying to show them, by the way, the 2.4 thing doesn't have to be the answer. By the way, your children can still be happy if you work like a nutter. By the way, that you can drop balls. Is trying to give them examples that aren't too, I don't mean hero worshipping somebody who's done something right. I mean, actually the reverse of that. Here's somebody who's done something a bit left field, a bit different, a bit for herself, and actually it kind of works out okay. And here's just a path that might be of use for you to pick through. And I can't think of many women that aren't very left field where that's concerned, i.e., didn't have the children maybe and worked all hours God sends in the city. I can't think of that many women who are 10 years older than me that I can go to and I can say, help me, tell me. So I do feel some responsibility just to say to younger women, here's what kind of worked for me and what didn't work, and where.
And also just to give them permission that it's okay. Like, it's okay to, you're not going to be the perfect mum, and sometimes your business might not be going, but just to keep going, and it's okay. It's that reassurance feeling, I guess, that I've definitely been looking for, but kind of haven't found, I guess.
Definitely. And my mum didn't work, so I used to, long time, I used to go to the children of successful women whenever somebody worked for me or somebody was younger and their mum worked and they were doing something quite well or spending a bit of time on it. I'd go, do you hate her or do you love her? And they were like, what? I'm really proud of her. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, fine. It was like, I need that reassurance that they're not going to wake up one day and go, you selfish cow.
And actually, but like for example, I don't know, Harper Beckham and the Beckham's kids. Oh, they I can't believe my mom has her own fashion brand, and she's, of course not. It makes you even. It's like you can be both, and both is amazing and inspirational. And I agree. So let's come on to the actual brand, your business. So the brand launched in 2005. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And then just go through the journey of what that looks like today. How you started with one product, and then how did it kind of develop after that?
So we have built it very slowly, brick by brick. And I think this is important to say as well, you don't have to do that. If we'd got funding earlier or we'd, decided we had enough cash to not have to live off the business at the point at which we did, we could have gone faster, but we didn't. We went slower. Again, 6 and 2 3s, could argue for both. But we went very slowly because we had to live off the business, because we had no money elsewhere. And because also we wanted to learn and we wanted to retain control. We didn't want to get an investor in early on. We wanted to be our own bosses, because that was an important part of the entrepreneurial journey for me, more than making the money, actually, or certainly as much. So we went really, really slowly. We launched with the candles, then we went to hand washes and hand lotions, then we went to reed diffusers. So we slowly built it up. We were very late to open our first store. That was sort of after we'd got quite a lot of wholesale customers. I think we had about 300 wholesale customers. That's individual mom and pop kind of stores. I used to go around, I remember I had a Mini at the time. I used to sort of figure out, obviously it's days before sat now, my God, I'm so old. We used to like print the map off and then figure out I can do 7 trips in a day to see people, re-merchandise the stock, explain the brand, try and sell them more, come back away with another order, that kind of thing. So started really, really small. And then we were online and offline. So we sort of had this multi-channel business, as I said. Times it was sort of more offline, and then as people started buying more, it became more online. We're now almost more than half online. And then we eventually decided to open our first store. So we opened our first store in Wimbledon, really small store, and it was a relatively cheap rent and rate. So we could sort of trial that out without feeling we've done everything, I think, quite gingerly. Again, because we had, so we could never really bet the farm. We always had to go quite slowly. And then sort of fast forward from that, and now we're, England is still, the UK is still our number one market, but we're also making really great progress in North America. So I go out there twice a year. We have 7 stores now. We're just opening next week our new store in Bicester, proper big, brilliant store in Bicester.
Really Bicester Village is just the dream.
So excited. We've got 5 really big now proper counters opening next month in John Lewis. So, downstairs in the proper department, not being on a shelf somewhere, which has only took me 10, 12 years to get there. It's been hard. So yeah, it's been slow, but I think we've learned all the way, and I don't know, would I do it again a different way? Maybe. It's
your brand, it's your baby that you've grown. You haven't kind of had an idea and then passed it on. Like, it's still yours. I can really tell that.
Totally. I mean, even last night they were sending me a homepage banner for that goes live next week, I think, and I could see I'm tinkering with far too much detail on it, which, by the way, I don't usually. But there's just the odd thing where you go, no, that's gone off because of X, Y, Z, or why are we heroing 1 wicks and not 3 wick candles? Because the 3 wick candle is the traditional NEOM candle. That's the one that really is our hero. The 1 wick is a smaller candle, and the 3 wick works because it was designed so that a room is filled with enough fragrance for the treatment effects to work. Not 1 wick. The 1 wick is a smaller version of that. People come on board, new people come on board, they don't understand that. You have to explain it to them again. So, and you're constantly evolving, thinking, oh, we need a blueprint over there. We need to have that written down somewhere so people can can learn and
They
understand
know.
my thinking. Yeah, because then they make the right decisions. So it's a balancing act between, you know, we have an MD now, Isabel, who is brilliant and runs pretty much everything for me, but still that sort of touch on things. You find sometimes it's that extra 10% that makes the magic happen.
Yeah. Like you are the magic. You are.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nicola's the magic. We're the magic. And you're also B Corporation certified, aren't you?
Yeah, we
How
are.
long ago did you get your certification?
18 months, I think.
Oh, okay.
Just nearly 18 months, about 15 months.
And
hard.
Yeah, it's so hard. I work with a brand that is B Corporation certified. I've been about 3.5 years now, and yeah. So just explain to me why that was so important for your brand to become B Corp.
It was important for my brand. It was also important for me. I think there needs to be standards around businesses doing the right thing. You know, it's funny, I had this call once about 2 years ago, and usually Oliver used to sign off on all kind of big purchase orders, and it was just some hand cream tubes. And it was a real light bulb moment for me that they rang me and said, now, you know, we can spend, I don't know, let's say £10,000 on these tubes with a single-use plastic, or if we use the recyclable ones, it's 15,000. Just checking with you which ones you want to order. And I was like, I shouldn't be allowed to make decisions on things like that, you know, because I chose the £15,000, you know, and spent the extra money. But how many people wouldn't, you know, couldn't?
Yeah.
And so it feels to me like we have to move to a place where there is regulation on not just product ethics, but also across your business, people ethics. And what a B Corp is, people don't realize is a B Corp is where a business is legally, it has to file all of its reports on people, planet, and profit. So when you file your company accounts, usually you file them based on the profit. It doesn't just allow you to be judged on the profit. You have to also be completely transparent when it comes to the people. And by the way, that's not just the people who work for you internally at NEOM, it's the people who work in the factories and the people who work in the farms, and the products. So everything that's produced, how it's produced. So it's really, really hard. And I wonder if there should be a sort of B Corp light, which might encourage even more businesses that didn't have the time and money to do it. That's another conversation. But I do feel like, you know, look, obviously we're in this to make a profit, but at what cost? Should be something that, you know, there's some guardrails around. And so I feel that's important for, we're talking about well-being, it's got to be a part of that toolkit. It's got to be, but also it's just the right thing to do.
And what did you learn in the process of doing, you know, is it like one person that comes in and kind of literally dives into every single part of your business, don't they? What
well, we work with an agency, but we also had somebody in-house, a girl called Charlotte, who's amazing, and she really spearheaded that project for us. And I thought it was, again, it's a cost, but to make sure somebody internally really understands it rather than it just being an external thing, felt less tick box exercise. And then she tries to keep those values alive, because obviously it's not a one-time project. You have to constantly go back and try and improve that score. You know, last week we were cycling miles for mental health outside all our shops. That's a part of the B Corp process, because you're doing something for charity, you're doing something for your team. She's making sure constantly, it's silly things like we're opening some new stores. You have to have these things, I don't know what they're called, put on the taps to make sure that that you don't use too much water. So constantly you're making decisions. The obvious ones are where your box cardboard comes from and how recyclable your mail order boxes are, etc., etc. But there's bits that go through everything, every element of your business. That, you know, we've just republished our NEOM values, and again we have to make sure that everyone's aligned with it. That comes from me, but we have to make sure everyone in the team's aligned. That's part of B Corp, is making sure that your team goes on that journey with you in lots of places you wouldn't realize. So and that's a balancing act as a leader, right? Because you need to set the tone, but you need to take people on the journey. But I think everyone learns from that how to run better businesses. So we've learned loads.
I bet. And do you feel that like the community within your employees is just, you know, obviously I've met quite a few of them, that like it was like they're like mini versions of you with their own personality, but they love the brand just as much as you did.
Bred them. I've bred
Except
them.
my children.
Hundreds of children.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look, we have really strong values at NEOM.
Okay.
And it actually took a while for me to kind of articulate that, because it's almost like you're sort of denouncing yourself to three things. But I think when you can do that, I'd always recommend try and do that when you're a brand, because I think hiring and making sure that the team sort of is constantly performing against those values means that you're all very cohesive. You can hire better. You can set tones for events that you do better. And I think they are very much in line with our sort of with our values.
Yeah.
And also, do you know, again, I'm 45. I don't want to work with people that I don't think are brilliant.
I know.
Sorry.
Also that you vibe off. Like you want to feel like you're like they're your mates, and that you want to see them every day. You know, you're seeing them more than you're seeing your children. You know?
I mean, like one of our values is be a good egg. I'm like, you know, sorry if I have to explain that to you. You're not right.
Bye. Yeah.
Goodbye. Do you know what I mean? Someone who's a bit, I don't know, snippy, or doesn't quite give that much, or doesn't turn up with a box of biscuits for the team when you had a shit day yesterday. You know, your mum should have taught you this. Like, I want good eggs.
Yeah.
And I think it's the gel that moves things forward in an entrepreneurial business. When things go wrong all the time, and things haven't been set out. Sorry, there isn't a rule book half the time, because we weren't this size last year, so we don't have a rule book for it. The thing that you need is someone to have that kind of roll their sleeves up, you know, challenge everything attitude, and ultimately be a good egg and go, do you know what? We got that wrong. Never mind. We're finishing an hour early. We're going for a pizza and we're resetting tomorrow. If you haven't got that, then everything sort of goes wrong.
Yeah. And obviously you're only as strong as your team, really. You know, it's obviously as you, but without them, without your core people, there's no business. You know,
and I don't want to go there. I don't want to go. I want, you know, I hang around there later and go for extra drinks and do extra things because they're cool people.
Yeah,
so,
totally.
Makes everyone want to work more.
What areas, so a big cool question, what areas of the business are making the most positive impact, would you say, in your business?
Oh gosh, that's really hard. I mean,
like, do you feel like that you're like, do you know what, we're doing that really well? Was it the people? Is it the planet? Is it the profit?
I think we're doing all of them well. Honestly,
Amazing.
I do. I think we're doing them all really well. I think it's interesting now that 5 years ago, when we were trying to find, you know, sustainable packaging and vessels and fill, you know, even where we would get waxes from, etc., so hard. Now the demand is there. It has become slightly easier because people are now, suppliers are now working with and trying out new materials, experimenting a lot more than they were before. And I think because we're a bit bigger, that coupled with the fact that they're getting more demand in general from the industry means, you know, we've got the ability to do more great stuff. So I think I'd say we're one of the best brands in the UK for making really good strides with that. I mean, you know, pretty much everything that we produce is reusable, refillable, recyclable. So it's and we were built like that sort of very early on. So I think we do a very, very good job where product is concerned. Really, really good. And people, I think we do a really good job where people's concerned. And you know, we do well with the numbers. I think do you know what? Hooray to my team. Hooray to my team for that. We are good at that. Yeah.
And what's next for you, Nicola? What's like your vision for yourself, for your business? What you know, you look inside, like, what is it that you see?
Well, you know, we set this up to be the #1 wellbeing brand, and we are there in the UK. We've got some real strides to make in North America. It's like starting all over again when you go to a new country. But having a brilliant team in place allows me to really focus on a lot more of the thought leadership stuff. I mean, even talking to you, I wouldn't have time, you know, 5 years ago to sit and do a podcast for an hour and a half, and I'm doing training this afternoon. I would have had to have been, you know, knee deep in doing stuff. And so I think the nice thing about growing and getting people to run that. Not only are they better than me because they've done it before, and so they are, and we can afford better people as well, of course, that's the reality. But is that it allows me to do a lot of that thought leadership stuff. So I can post on Instagram about books that I think are really amazing that also are going to help you on your stress journey. I can go on podcasts and talk about really the meaning behind NEOM so people understand it rather than just at product level. I can, spend more time really sort of thinking about those kind of big vision products, and we can afford to do products that might not even be those kind of quick high sort of selling items, but they can be products that really help people. Or we do a wellbeing edit every January. It doesn't make us any money, but it's great for signposting people to other products that help. So that sort of high level thinking, which allows us to be that number one wellbeing brand and talk to our customers on a much more kind of bigger, wider level, I love doing. It's my passion. I feel I'm pretty well versed and well educated in that, and I think I have now the time to do that. So I love doing that. And then we will open some more stores. Not many. We will open a few more stores. We've got some more in for next year. I am on a plane more because the children are older. So I have no qualms about leaving 2 arsey teenagers as much as I did when they were 5 and 8. So
love that. And my final question for you is, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Oh my God, I think be a bit more patient. I was always, and I still am, always in a rush.
Oh my God, same.
I'm always like, if I don't scrabble it, if I don't, and it doesn't really make any difference. You just cause yourself angst. You're going to get there anyway. Just enjoy the ride a bit more. That constant worry, will I get there? And if I do this and if I do the other, I think take a bit more of a chill pill. And I think, again, we, without repeating ourselves, being able to create that wellbeing toolkit, talking about it so you understand the importance of it, you see it as a necessity, not just a luxury. Maybe if I'd known that would have helped me to create that sort of more balanced lifestyle and really honor those pockets of time for myself throughout the day, which maybe would have in turn helped me doing that. But I don't know, I would have done a load different, and I would have done a load the same.
The thing is, if you hadn't been pushed to breaking point, we wouldn't have the brand that you have today. And so it's like that pressure, isn't it? A diamond is formed under pressure. Like, you had to get to that point where you were like, enough, and now you have this amazing
and exactly. And you have to realize, I got NEOM, it came at a cost. I've done well here, it came at a cost there. Everything has got a yin and yang, everything. So if you want to nail that, it will come with that, and you have to pick and choose, and that's life.
Nicola, it has been the biggest pleasure. I would literally sit and talk to you all day. I've got a million questions, but I just want to wrap this up by saying thank you. So much gratitude for myself and all the Inspire podcast listeners. I know that there's going to be so many nuggets that have been taken away from, say, even me just now, like, right, what can I implement that I have just spoken to you about? So keep being amazing, keep shining. And I just, if you're not following Nicola on our social media, please, it's at Nicola Elliott NEOM, isn't it?
That's right. 2 L's, 2 T's, at Nicola Elliott NEOM. Yeah,
because it's just so nice. It's just, I feel when I go to your page, it gives me the warm fuzzies. That's what it feels like. So
thank you. Well done. I love the podcast. You're doing a brilliant job as well. So
thanks, honey. We'll see you soon. Take care, everyone. Bye.